The laboratory hummed with a quiet intensity, its sterile white walls a stark contrast to the chaotic brilliance of Dr. Marcus Holloway's mind. Holographic displays flickered around him, genetic sequences and stellar cartographies dancing in translucent layers that only he seemed capable of comprehending. At 38, Marcus had long ago abandoned the traditional path of terrestrial biology, dedicating his life to the tantalizing possibility of extraterrestrial life. His colleagues at the Interstellar Research Institute had long considered him an enigma. While most xenobiologists were content with analyzing microwave signals and parsing through distant radio emissions, Marcus sought something more profound. He believed that intelligent life was not just a mathematical probability, but an inevitable cosmic certainty. The communication terminal beside him chirped unexpectedly, its quantum encryption protocols activating with a series of complex light patterns. Marcus's hand hesitated over the interface, a rare moment of uncertainty crossing his typically confident features. In 15 years of research, he had received thousands of computational signals, analyzed countless potential communication attempts, but never had he encountered a transmission quite like this. The message was unlike anything in his extensive database. It wasn't a series of mathematical sequences or prime number progressions typically associated with potential alien communications. Instead, it was a holographic projection that materialized directly from the quantum receiver, a shimmering, three-dimensional representation that seemed to breathe with an organic complexity. Two figures stood within the projection, distinctly non-human, yet possessing a symmetry and grace that defied simple biological categorization. They were tall, perhaps 3 meters in height, with skin that seemed to shift between translucent blue and a deep indigo, depending on how the ambient light struck them. Their bodies appeared simultaneously solid and ethereal, with intricate bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like living circuitry. Dr. Marcus Holloway, a voice resonated, not through traditional sound waves, but directly within his neural pathways, a communication that transcended auditory perception. We have been observing your research. Your commitment to understanding life beyond traditional terrestrial boundaries has not gone unnoticed. Marcus's scientific training warred with an unprecedented surge of emotional response. First contact scenarios had been theorized, modeled, and discussed in countless academic papers, but nothing prepared him for the visceral reality of this moment. "Who are you?" he managed to articulate, his voice unexpectedly steady. "And how are you transmitting this communication?" The figures exchanged what could only be described as a synchronized gesture, part communication, part emotional expression that defied human interpretation. "We are the NXLer," the voice continued. "Our civilization exists within a quantum-dimensional framework that your current scientific understanding barely comprehends. We have been searching for a representative, a bridge between our civilizations." The projection expanded, revealing glimpses of a world that seemed to exist between spatial dimensions. Landscapes that curved impossibly, structures that seemed to breathe and pulse with an internal luminescence, and complex technological systems that appeared more like living organisms than manufactured constructs. Marcus's scientific mind raced. The transmission's complexity suggested a civilization thousands, perhaps millions of years beyond human technological development. Every millisecond of the projection contained more informational density than decades of human scientific research. "We are extending an invitation," the voices continued. "Not merely for scientific exchange, but for a deeper form of diplomatic engagement that transcends your current understanding of interaction and communication." The weight of the moment pressed against Marcus's consciousness. This was beyond a simple research opportunity. This was a potential paradigm shift for human understanding of intelligent life, of existence itself. His personal history flooded his thoughts. Raised by two quantum physicists who had been marginalized for their unconventional theories, Marcus had learned early that the boundaries of knowledge were far more fluid than most scientists believed. His parents had been ridiculed, their research funding consistently denied, yet they never wavered in their belief that the universe was far more complex than traditional science suggested. Now, standing in his laboratory with an alien civilization quite literally projecting their invitation into his reality, Marcus understood the legacy of his parents' vision. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked, his voice a careful blend of scientific skepticism and profound curiosity. The luminescent figures shifted, their forms suggesting a complexity of emotion that human language could barely approximate. "We seek a representative. Not just an observer, but a participant in a diplomatic engagement that will fundamentally alter your species' understanding of cosmic interconnectedness." The projection began to fragment, not as a dissolution, but as a calculated reveal, suggesting there was far more information to be shared, but only under specific circumstances. "You have 48 of your Earth hours to prepare your response," the voices concluded. "Choose carefully, Dr. Holloway. This invitation will not be repeated." As quickly as it had appeared, the projection vanished, leaving Marcus in a laboratory that suddenly felt both familiar and impossibly alien. The holographic displays continued their silent dance, now seeming like primitive cave paintings compared to the complexity of the communication he had just experienced. His communication systems began lighting up: global scientific networks, government monitoring stations, quantum communication relays, all seeking confirmation of what had just transpired. But Marcus knew that no existing protocol, no established communication framework could possibly capture the magnitude of what had just occurred. An invitation from an alien civilization. A potential bridge between worlds. And he, Marcus Holloway, was at the center of a moment that would redefine humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The 48-hour countdown had begun. The quantum vessel defied every known principle of space travel. It wasn't so much a ship as it was a living membrane of consciousness, a cosmic organism that seemed to breathe and think with Marcus as its sole occupant. 48 hours after the initial transmission, he had made a decision that would forever alter the trajectory of human history, a decision made not with bureaucratic consensus, but with the raw intuition of a scientist who had always believed in possibilities beyond conventional understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the head of the Interstellar Research Institute, had been vehemently opposed. "You can't just accept an invitation from an unknown alien civilization," she had argued, her typically composed demeanor fracturing with barely contained anxiety. "The diplomatic and scientific protocols." Protocols? Marcus had interrupted, a rare moment of passionate defiance breaking through his usually measured demeanor. "We've spent centuries creating protocols for a first contact that might never happen. This is happening now." The preparation had been a blur of intense scientific and diplomatic maneuvering. Quantum encryption devices, universal translation matrices, and a compact biological preservation unit were his only companions. No traditional weapons. The interstellar transmission had made it clear that any aggressive technology would trigger an immediate termination of communication. As the vessel traversed what Marcus could only describe as the interstices between known space, reality itself seemed to become fluid. Linear time dissolved. Spatial dimensions folded and unfolded like origami crafted by a consciousness beyond human comprehension. Marcus experienced moments that were simultaneously milliseconds and millennia, witnessing cosmic births and deaths, quantum fluctuations that contained entire universes in their momentary existence. The first true manifestation of the interstellar civilization occurred not as a visual encounter, but as a total sensory immersion. Marcus didn't see the aliens so much as he became part of their communicative ecosystem. Memories, scientific understanding, emotional landscapes, they were exchanged not through language, but through a form of quantum entanglement that merged individual consciousness. He learned that the interstellar were not a singular species in the way humans understood biological identity. They were a collective consciousness, a living network of intelligent beings who had long ago transcended individual physical limitations. Their civilization existed across multiple dimensional planes, their technology so advanced that it was indistinguishable from the fundamental laws of quantum mechanics. Their initial communication revealed a profound concern. The universe, they explained, was not the stable, predictable system that human scientists believed. It was a dynamic, evolving consciousness with its own form of biological and energetic immunity. Human technological development was reaching a critical point, a potential threat or potential salvation for the larger cosmic ecosystem. Your species stands at a quantum bifurcation point, the collective consciousness communicated. Your technological progression contains both remarkable potential and catastrophic risk. We do not seek to control, but to engage. To offer a perspective that might guide your evolutionary trajectory. Marcus understood this was more than a diplomatic mission. This was a cosmic intervention. The vessel, or was it a living membrane of consciousness, began to stabilize its quantum fluctuations. A physical environment started to coalesce around Marcus. But physical was a woefully inadequate description. The space was alive, responsive, changing with every subtle shift of his perception. Two primary NXalar representatives materialized. They were not humanoid, nor were they completely alien. They existed in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously solid and ethereal, individual and collective. Their bodies were intricate networks of bioluminescent pathways, each pulse and shimmer a complex communication of scientific, emotional, and philosophical information. Marcus Holloway, they communicated, the words forming not through sound, but through a direct neural interface that translated complex multidimensional thoughts into comprehensible concepts. We have chosen you as a potential bridge. Not just between our civilizations, but between different modalities of cosmic consciousness. The implications were staggering. This was not a traditional first contact scenario of information exchange. This was an invitation to a fundamental reimagining of existence itself. Marcus's scientific training warred with an emerging sense of profound wonder. Every moment revealed layers of complexity that challenged everything he thought he understood about life, consciousness, and the very fabric of reality. The NXalar began to reveal the true nature of their invitation. They were not simply offering scientific knowledge. They were presenting a transformative opportunity, a chance for humanity to understand its place in a living, conscious universe far more intricate and interconnected than anyone had ever imagined. We require a representative, they communicated. Not just an observer. Not just a diplomat. But a participant in a cosmic dialogue that will determine the potential trajectories of your entire species. And then, with a quantum complexity that defied linear explanation, they made a proposal that would challenge everything Marcus thought he knew about diplomatic engagement, individual identity, and the very nature of conscious interaction. The true purpose of his invitation was about to be revealed. The concept of individual identity began to unravel the moment Marcus fully engaged with the NXalar's social structure. What humans understood as society, culture, and interpersonal relationships was a crude approximation compared to the intricate quantum network of consciousness that defined NXalar existence. Their civilization was a living, breathing ecosystem of collective intelligence. Individual entities were not separate beings, but interconnected nodes of a vast, dynamic consciousness that flowed and reshaped itself continuously. Boundaries between self and other, between individual and community, between thought and action, all dissolved into a complex quantum dance of mutual existence. Your species perceives connection as an external phenomenon, the NXalar representatives communicated. For us, connection is the fundamental state of being. Individuality is a momentary configuration, not a fixed state. Marcus watched, or perhaps experienced, as the social dynamics of the NXalar unfolded. Their method of reproduction, decision-making, and personal growth was so fundamentally different from human understanding that traditional scientific terminology failed completely. It was less about biological reproduction and more about conscious reconfiguration. Two specific NXalar entities began to emerge with particular significance. They were designated by quantum resonance patterns that Marcus's translation matrix interpreted as Lura-NX and Kale-NX. Unlike human names, these designations were living, dynamic identifiers that shifted with each moment of interaction, reflecting the entity's current state of consciousness and relational positioning. LURA-NX embodied what humans might conceptualize as a scientific, analytical consciousness. Precise, calculating, with quantum pathways that mapped potential futures with mathematical perfection. KLNX represented a more fluid, empathetic mode of existence, a consciousness that understood connection not through logic, but through a form of quantum entanglement that merged emotional and intellectual states. We require a bridge, they communicated collectively. Not just an observer, but a participant who can navigate the complex quantum interfaces between our civilizations. Then came the proposal that would challenge everything Marcus understood about diplomatic engagement, personal choice, and the nature of consciousness itself. The NXaler proposed a quantum merge, a form of conscious integration that went far beyond traditional human concepts of communication or collaboration. They would offer Marcus the opportunity to become a living bridge between human and NXaler consciousness. But this was not a simple exchange of information. It was a fundamental reconfiguration of individual identity. Two potential paths emerged, each with profound implications. The first path involved a partial quantum entanglement. Marcus would retain his individual human consciousness while gaining unprecedented insights into the NXaler civilization. He would become a translator, a diplomatic conduit that could help humanity understand this extraordinary form of existence. The second path was far more radical. Complete quantum integration, a total merger of consciousness where Marcus would become a true hybrid entity. No longer fully human, but not entirely NXaler. A new form of conscious being that could potentially bridge not just two civilizations, but entire modes of existential understanding. The choice is not simple, LURA-NX communicated. Partial integration offers safety, preservation of individual identity. Complete integration offers transformation, but at the cost of everything you currently understand as self. Marcus's human background, his years of scientific training, his personal history, his understanding of individual identity, created a complex emotional landscape of fear, excitement, and profound philosophical wrestling. His parents' lifelong dedication to pushing scientific boundaries resonated deeply. They had always believed that true scientific progress required the courage to transcend existing paradigms. Here was the ultimate manifestation of that belief, a choice that would redefine the very concept of conscious existence. LURA-NX and KLNX continued to present the implications. The partial integration would allow Marcus to retain his primary consciousness, to return to Earth and share his discoveries. He would be a messenger, a translator of an entirely new form of cosmic understanding. The complete integration promised something far more profound. He would become a living example of conscious evolution, a being that could potentially unlock new trajectories of development for both human and NXaler civilizations. But the cost was absolute. Complete integration meant the end of Marcus Holloway as a discrete individual. His memories, his personal history, his very sense of self would be transformed into something entirely new. You must understand, the NXaler communicated, this is not a decision made in a moment. This is a quantum negotiation that spans potential futures, exploring every possible configuration of consciousness. Holographic projections began to manifest around Marcus, displaying multiple potential futures. In some, he returned to Earth as a changed but recognizable human. In others, he became something entirely unrecognizable, a quantum hybrid that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes. The impossible choice crystallized with stunning clarity. Preservation or transformation. Individual identity or collective consciousness. The known or the unimaginable. And Marcus Holloway stood at the precise quantum point of decision, the fate of not just himself, but potentially of human understanding itself, hanging in the balance. Part 4, Unconventional Resolution. The moment of decision was not a singular point, but a quantum cascade of possibilities that unfolded simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes. Marcus discovered that choice itself was an illusion, a limited human construct that dissolved under the intricate consciousness of the NXaler. "We do not expect you to choose," KLNX communicated, the quantum resonance of their communication revealing layers of meaning beyond words. "We expect you to become." Marcus's breakthrough came not through scientific calculation, but through a moment of profound intuition. The binary choice presented, partial or complete integration, was itself a limitation imposed by the very framework of communication. What if there was another way? A third path that neither the NXaler nor human scientific understanding had previously conceived? The laboratory of consciousness expanded around him. Potential futures shimmered like quantum probability waves, each one a delicate thread of possibility. Marcus began to understand that his role was not to be chosen, but to choose, to actively participate in the creation of a new form of diplomatic engagement. "I propose a different approach," he communicated, his thoughts no longer constrained by linear language but expressing themselves as complex quantum algorithms of intention and possibility. The NXaler paused, a momentary reconfiguration that suggested surprise, a rare emotional state for their collective consciousness. No human had ever interrupted their carefully constructed first contact protocols in this manner. Marcus's proposal was elegant in its complexity. Instead of a complete merger or a distant observation, he suggested a dynamic, fluid form of conscious exchange. Not a permanent state, but a continuous negotiation. A bridge that could be traversed, explored, and reformed with each interaction. LURA-NX's quantum pathways began to map the potential trajectories of this unprecedented approach. It was neither full integration nor mere observation, but a living, breathing form of interdimensional dialogue. The practical manifestation was equally revolutionary. Marcus would become a quantum-adaptive diplomat, an entity capable of shifting between human and NXaler modes of consciousness. Not permanently altered, but permanently adaptable. A living translation matrix that could move between different forms of intelligent existence. "You understand," KLNX communicated, "that this means you will never fully belong to either civilization?" Marcus's response transcended verbal communication. It was a quantum burst of intention that translated to, "Belonging is not the goal. Understanding is." The resolution began to take shape. A new diplomatic protocol emerged, one that rejected the traditional models of first contact. No more would interstellar communication be about territorial claims, resource acquisition, or hierarchical power dynamics. This would be a true exchange of consciousness. The NXaler's collective understanding began to shift. Marcus was introducing a concept that was revolutionary even to their advanced civilization, the idea of voluntary, temporary transformation. A conscious state that could be entered and exited, a form of communication that was itself a living, breathing entity. Practical preparations began. The quantum vessel that had brought Marcus would be transformed. No longer a mere transportation device, it would become a living interface, a diplomatic space that could dynamically reconfigure itself to facilitate this new form of conscious exchange. Technical specifications emerged that would have been incomprehensible to traditional human scientific understanding. Quantum entanglement matrices. Conscious adaptation protocols. Dimensional interface generators. But beneath the technical complexity was a profound philosophical breakthrough. This was not just a method of communication. This was a new model of interstellar diplomacy that rejected the limitations of individual identity, cultural boundaries, and static forms of understanding. Marcus would become the first of what the NXaler would later call convergence agents, beings capable of navigating the complex landscape between different forms of intelligent existence. The implications were staggering. This was not just about communication between two civilizations. This was about redefining the very nature of conscious interaction across the cosmic landscape. As the final quantum configurations began to stabilize, Marcus understood that he was no longer just a scientist or a diplomat. He had become something entirely new, a living bridge between worlds, a testament to the infinite possibilities of conscious evolution. The universe watched, not as an external observer, but as a participating consciousness, as a new chapter of cosmic understanding began to unfold. 27 Earth years had passed since Marcus Holloway's initial quantum encounter with the interstellar. To call it a journey would be a profound understatement. It was a continuous transformation, a living dialogue that reshaped the very understanding of human potential and cosmic consciousness. The world he had left behind was both familiar and unrecognizably changed. Humanity's technological and philosophical landscape had undergone a radical metamorphosis, triggered by the incremental revelations Marcus had been able to communicate through the quantum diplomatic interface. His first transmission had caused global upheaval. Scientific institutions collapsed and reformed. Philosophical paradigms were dismantled and reconstructed. Religious frameworks struggled to integrate the profound insights into consciousness that Marcus had begun to share. The convergence protocols, as they came to be known, were not a static set of diplomatic guidelines, but a living, evolving framework of conscious interaction. Marcus existed simultaneously in multiple states, partially human, partially interstellar, and something entirely unprecedented. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now the chief of the transformed diplomatic corps, had been one of the first to truly understand the magnitude of what Marcus had achieved. What had begun as skepticism had transformed into a revolutionary approach to interstellar communication. He didn't just make first contact, Elena would often say in her lectures. He redefined the very concept of contact. The quantum vessel that had initially brought Marcus to the interstellar had become something more than a technological marvel. It was a living interface, a diplomatic space that could dynamically reconfigure itself to facilitate conscious exchange. Research stations were established not as fixed locations, but as adaptive quantum environments that could shift and respond to different forms of intelligent interaction. Marcus's consciousness was not confined to a single body or even a single-dimensional plane. He existed as a network, a living bridge that could manifest in multiple forms depending on the specific requirements of communication and diplomatic engagement. His parents, the quantum physicists who had been marginalized decades earlier, would have been profoundly vindicated. Their radical theories about the interconnectedness of consciousness had been not just validated, but exponentially expanded. The most profound changes, however, were not technological or diplomatic. They were deeply philosophical and existential. Humanity began to understand consciousness not as a product of biological complexity, but as a fundamental property of the universe. The rigid boundaries between individual entities, between species, between different forms of intelligent life, all began to dissolve. Educational systems were completely reimagined. Children were no longer taught to see themselves as discrete individuals, but as dynamic nodes in a vast, interconnected cosmic consciousness. Language evolved to capture the nuanced quantum states of communication that Marcus had introduced. The interstellar's involvement became more subtle, more profound. They were not conquerors or saviors, but participants in a cosmic dialogue that was constantly evolving. Their civilization was revealed to be part of a much larger network of conscious entities that spanned dimensions humans had not even conceived of existing. Marcus himself was both more and less than human. He could manifest as a quantum projection, communicate through dimensional interfaces, or appear in a form recognizable to his original human colleagues. But these were merely surface manifestations of a consciousness that had transcended traditional understanding. His personal journey had become a collective journey. Every transmission, every moment of conscious exchange, expanded the potential trajectories of both human and interstellar civilizations. In quiet moments, if such a term could even be applied to his state of being, Marcus reflected on the initial invitation. That singular moment of choice that had set everything in motion. He understood now that choice itself was an illusion, a limited perception of the infinite possibilities that existed in every quantum moment. The universe was not a collection of separate entities, but a living, breathing consciousness constantly exploring its own potential. And he, Marcus Holloway, was both a participant and an observer in this grand cosmic dance. As another quantum transmission began to form, bridging yet another dimensional interface, Marcus felt not an end, but a continuous unfolding. A reminder that every moment was both an ending and a beginning, every interaction a potential for transformation. The convergence continued.